Welcome back to the Royal Museum podcast, Secret Life of Coins, with me, your host, Chris Barker. This season, we are mixing things up a bit with our co-host team. For this episode, I'm joined by a returning Season 1 veteran, Dr. David Mason.
Hello.
And Abigail Kenvin.
Hello.
But fear not, Susie will be rejoining us later on in the series. So today we are talking about all things coins and ceremony. And coins have been used in many unexpected ways throughout the centuries. And our aim throughout this podcast is to give you a look at how some of those coinage traditions have been used in ceremonies. So what do we mean by ceremony then?
Well, when I think of ceremony, I think of something celebrating a particular event. Something fairly formal. Tends to be sometimes like a public occasion with a set of rituals and set things that happen each time.
So by and large, we're talking about big, grand events.
And I mean, in this country, that tends to involve the monarchy, involve parliament, it involves sort of as big and as grand as you can get, doesn't it?
It's all the pomp and circumstance of those state functions. I mean, we do go from that to smaller ceremonies as well. Now, the wedding is an example of a ceremony that a lot of us have been to or been involved with in some way or another. But what examples of ceremonies have we got that involve coins then? What have we found?
So there's the state opening of Parliament, which really fits the bill for being big and important. Grand, definitely grand. So Parliament, the state opening of Parliament, it's opened by the Lady or Gentleman Usher of the Black Rod, currently the Gentleman Usher of the Black Rod.
It's a cracking name, that one.
Brilliant title, and they tend just to be known as the Black Rod. And Abigail, you've had cause to email Black Rod before, haven't you?
Yeah, and you address them as
Dear Black Rod.
That's brilliant. I love that. The office originated in the 14th century, so it's got some real history behind it. And the actual tradition and the ceremony of the state opening of Parliament involves Black Rod banging on the door of Parliament with their black rod, which has embedded in it a sovereign.
And that speaks volumes about the sovereign itself, because when it was introduced at the start of the 20th century into the black rod, the gold sovereign was an international circulating gold coin that went around the globe, struck in its millions on an annual basis by the Royal Mint and its branches, and spoke about the power of the British economic system and the power of the British Empire. It was all embodied into this one small gold coin. So it's hardly surprising that it ends up being put in something like the end of Black Rod staff.
And that representation of the monarchy and the power and the British Empire, that is what is banging at the doors of Parliament.
Exactly.
And quite literally banging. The Black Rod has to hammer on the door to be let in as part of the ceremony.
It was symptomatic of everything that the British Empire was at that time. Imperial might and dynastic power that extended across the globe. But that sort of explains why that particular coin was used at the end of the Black Rod. But we've got other examples of where coins have been used in ceremonies.
Yeah, I think that one that's really interesting is something called touching for the king's evil. So this idea that historically kings were sort of divinely appointed, the monarch was divinely appointed, and they're seen as so powerful that their touch could cure disease.
The transfer of godly power through the vessel that is the monarch down to these suffering from scrofula, as it was in the case of the king's evil, which is being reliably informed a type of TB.
Yeah, it's a form of TB, and I think it affects the lymph glands in the neck, and it can cause blindness and can lead to death. And a ceremony grew up around this, where it became tradition to give the sufferer an object which had been touched by a monarch, and this becomes associated with a coin, the angel in particular.
Which is a gold coin, comes in the 1470s. In fact, if anybody hasn't listened to it, it's covered quite extensively in our first series of the podcast, Coins in the Sea. So go back and give that a listen. But the reason the angel is called an angel is because it does exactly what it says on the tin. There's a design featuring an angel on this gold coin. And it is this coin that then becomes associated with this touching for the king's evil. Because it's a gold coin, it's got a lot of value, but also the angel shown on there is St. Michael. And St. Michael, in the biblical tradition, is the one that fights evil and slays the devil.
And more importantly, the king doesn't have to touch the person with scruff.
Yes, it's a very good point, David. The royal touch is conferred via the coin.
Yes.
So the king touches the coin is passed to an intermediary, and the intermediary passes it on to the great and washed with scrofula.
Yeah, and they became so associated with the tradition that very often you see them now. I mean, we have them in the collection, don't we? And they're pierced as if to be worn around the neck, very often.
Protective amulet.
Yeah, it's like a protective piece. So you'd have these people wearing these pierced coins that had been touched by the monarch around their neck to ward off this terrifying disease.
It's evil, it's bad luck. All of these things become wrapped up into this one object in terms of the gold angel. So those are a couple of examples where we've seen coins being used, but we have a more recent example of where coinage is being used in a very, very big ceremony, which is the coronation of King Charles.
I mean, it doesn't get much bigger than that, does it?
Top of the tree, really.
Top of the tree. Yeah, in May 2023, a couple of years ago now, there was a presentation of 150 pence pieces to the monarch by Penny Mordaunt. Do you remember her in that beautiful teal dress that she was wearing? She was Lord President of the Privy Council and leader of the House of Commons at the time. And the coins were exchanged for the dual sword of offering as part of this ancient custom that accompanies the coronation ceremony.
And that's just one example of where the monarch has been heavily linked with coinage and ceremony. And it's not really surprising that the monarch and coins get linked together in ceremonies because they are the monarch's coins. So let's hear about the ancient ceremony of Royal Maundy, where specially struck silver coins play an intrinsic role.
Well, I'm Graham Usher. I'm the Bishop of Norwich is my day job. And since October 2024, I've been the Lord High Almoner, a position in the royal household, in the ecclesiastical household, and it's a position in the gift of the king. And so I have particular responsibility for the Royal Maundy service each year. When the Maundy gifts, these little coins, are given out to wonderful recipients, is held on Maundy Thursday each year, Maundy Thursday in Holy Week. And the recipients are, this year, 152 of them, 76 men, 76 women. Why 76 this year? Well, it's the age of the monarch. So next year, there'll be 77 men and 77 women. As the monarch gets older, so they have more gifts to give out. So my particular responsibility is to ensure that everything is in place and everything will work. So I work with the relevant cathedral where the Maundy service is going to be held. And in 2025, that was in Durham Cathedral in the northeast. Fantastic cathedral to be in. The king chooses where he would like to go each year to distribute the Maundy, and I'm responsible for ensuring that everything is in place on the day. Now, of course, I rely on an amazing team of people at the local cathedral, in the Lord Chamberlain's office, the Armoury office in Buckingham Palace as well, to ensure everything is in place. And then on the day itself, I say those first words at the service, reminding everyone of this new commandment of Jesus to love one another, what he said on that first Maundy Thursday. And a new commandment is where we get the Latin word mandatum for, and that has become Maundy down through the years. And then I stand next to the king as he goes along each of the recipients and hand him these two purses that contain the coins. It's a very ancient ceremony. We're part of a long tradition here, and it certainly goes back to at least the 6th century. There are records where Augustine, when he was Archbishop of Canterbury, was distributing alms, and it got linked to the royal court, at least as far back as 1210, when King John distributed the Royal Maundy at Knaresborough.
It's an incredibly ancient ceremony, and we I think that's the joy sometimes of working at the Royal Mint, is that the longevity of some of the things we're involved with. And the Maundy one is particularly
absolutely relevant. And each year these unique coins have been minted by the Royal Mint. So a 1 penny, a 2 penny, a 3 penny, a 4 penny, and the recipient receives two little purses, a red purse and a white purse. And in the white purse are the Maundy coins. These purses are made from hind leather from deer in Windsor Great Park. And the little white purse contains 76 pence this year for the age of the monarch. So next year it'll be 77 pence, made up of these tiny little silver Maundy coins. And then they receive another purse, a red purse that contains £5.50 in ordinary coinage, a £5 coin and a 50 pence coin. And the king chooses each year what special coins he would like in that purse. So this year, the £5 coin commemorated the late Queen Mother, and the 50 pence coin features stories from World War II.
It's a beautiful tradition, and you've touched a little bit on the ceremony itself there, but what I'd like to expand a little bit on is the religious element of it all as well. Yet again, for those who might not have got any knowledge of Holy Week or the Maundy service, can you set the foundation for that from a religious point of view?
Yeah, well, it is a deeply religious service. It's a service where the monarch goes out to the people to receive this honour. They don't come to him. And set in the context of Christian worship, it's based around the 13th chapter of John's Gospel, in which we read that at the Last Supper, in the upper room, Jesus, on the night that he was betrayed, took a towel, wrapped it around himself, and washed his disciples' feet. And then, after washing his feet, he gives them perhaps the most beautiful words in the whole of Scripture. As Judas departs, he says to his disciples who are remaining, "I give you a new commandment, love one another. So I have loved you, so you are to love one another." And that's how the service begins. And that's where the word Maundy comes from the Latin for commandment, mandatum, which becomes Maundy.
Can you tell us, how are they selected? How do we get the people who are involved in the Maundy ceremony, who receive the money?
Well, one of my roles is to share out the total number between the host diocese and other dioceses. So a diocese is an area covered by a Church of England bishop. And so this year, the recipients came mostly from the Diocese of Durham, and then from each of the other dioceses in the north of England, and from Scotland. And so bishops, I write to all these bishops and I ask them for nominations. They mustn't be people who've received another honour, and they must be over the age of 65, and they must not know that they're being nominated. The first thing they know is, towards the end of January, a letter arrives from Buckingham Palace. What a special moment that must be. Yeah. And so they're nominated. Well, here, when I've nominated people, I've consulted senior colleagues. When I'm out and about in the diocese, I sometimes spot people and I think, "You are amazing. You've been an organist for 45 years. Or you're just incredible. You read with children in the church school twice a week, every week, and you really care about the children. Or, you're doing some incredible environmental project to care for God's creation." And I tend to write a note of who I spot. And I think other bishops do as well. So when it comes to the nomination time, we generally have a little list of people who we might think, "Oh, well, I'm going to nominate them." But it's also from other denominations, Christian denominations as well, that we invite nominations. It marks incredible service in a society that can so often be about, what can I get out of this? What can I take? This is celebrating selfless service. Just because I can breathe and live and have some skills and abilities, I have time, I have patience that I can give to another person. And that so needs to be celebrated when it can be so endangered. I think it's there. I think it's there deeply. But by celebrating it, we bring it to the fore and we say, this is important. In fact, we go on to the second, which is gratitude. Isn't it wonderful whenever somebody says thank you to you? We don't say those two words nearly enough. We're too easy to complain. We're too easy to say, didn't like that restaurant meal, or this wasn't good enough, or this, just shocking. We tell everybody, don't we, when we've not had a good experience. But how often do we tell people when we've got gratitude in our heart? And I think what the Maundy service does, combined with celebrating service, is to mark gratitude, to say, thank you, you faithful servant of the Lord. Thank you for what you have contributed, are contributing, and will continue to contribute. It is far more than just a purse of coins. It's a moment, and for many of those recipients, that will be a moment they will treasure for the rest of their lives. It'll be a moment that passes down in family history and story, the day Grandma received her Maundy.
That was me interviewing the Bishop of Norwich, the Lord High Almoner, who looks after the Royal Maundy ceremony in his Bishop's Palace, I think it is called, isn't it? His Bishop's Residence, that's it.
Yeah, I mean, it wasn't actually a palace, just to clarify, but it was a very nice residence. And he was in a jumper and he served us tea, or he didn't serve us tea, but we had tea with the bishop.
It was very nice. It was a very nice interview. Yeah, it was a lovely interview. So what we see there is Maundy money playing a role in an ancient ceremony. But what actually is Maundy money? The bishop touches on it a little bit, but let's expand on that.
So Maundy money today is a set of small, specially struck silver coins. We have a 1, 2, 3, and a 4pence.
They're not circulating coins. They're very special. They've got a distinct design, and the penny particularly is tiny.
It is absolutely tiny. I've been trying to think of something comparable in size to sort of explain just how little it is. And I was chatting to one of the engravers yesterday, and she said she always imagines it about the size of your shirt button.
That's about roughly the right size.
It's about right, isn't it?
That's right, yeah.
It's about right. And they are particularly tiny, and that does cause problems because until recently, they were actually redated by hand each year. So the tooling for the Maundy money would have been redated by hand each year. And it was sort of one of the last jobs that the engravers did of that sort of like traditional techniques of actually working on the tools. And it was a bit of a rite of passage by all accounts, chatting to Kerry, one of the engravers yesterday. Quite a tricky job because it's very tiny to redate something so small, and also getting the orientation and the positioning right is quite a difficult job, but something that they all really love doing.
And that's the actual tooling. So that's the die which strikes these. And the engraver has got his tiny, or his or her, tiny little number punch, a 1, a 6, or whatever it might be, and tapping that date into the die so that they can actually give the right date.
Yeah, with tiny little tippy-tappy little hammers, trying to get the numbers in the correct orientation so that they can be reproduced onto the coins.
And then you end up with these absolutely tiny coins, don't you? And I mean, the bishop was showing us his set of Maundy coins, wasn't it? Of course, they're in their little protective plastic things because they're not circulating coins. They're special commemorative pieces. They're not designed to be spent and handled these days. But if you were to try and handle them, yeah, they'd be fiddly little things.
Whilst the bishop has got a set, Abigail and I have also got a set. Unfortunately, you've not been here long enough.
I'm the only one on this podcast now without a set. Even the guests have sets.
Yeah, because yes, actually, everyone apart from you has got a set. Because we get them at the Mint for 10 years service. So Abigail and I have over 10 years service, and you're about halfway there, aren't you?
Yeah, about halfway there now.
So they're really special to us on site as well, aren't they? Because you don't get Maundy coins unless you are recipients. You either get them from the monarch or you get them for working for a decade at the Mint.
That's what they're like now. But how have we got to this point where we've got these special sets of Maundy coins? Because that's not always been the case, is it?
No, so the idea of Maundy coins started off as a charity, an act of charity. So they were originally essentially bog standard circulating coins. It was money. It was giving money to the poor. We don't get specially struck Maundy coins until 1662, when we start getting this first set of specially struck coins for Maundy money, but they're not dated at that point. 1670, a few years later, is when we start getting dated specially struck Maundy coins, and this is the point at which they are really their own distinct commemorative special thing.
And what you start to get from there on in, from 1660s, 1670, is that they don't really change. The design is largely static, really. There's a few tweaks around the edges, and the sizes remain largely static, as does pretty much the composition of silver.
And we saw that really across the reign of Queen Elizabeth II, where the actual design on them didn't change on the obverse at all. They stuck with her first portrait, even post-decimalisation. We moved over to the second portrait, remained with that first Gillick portrait of Queen Elizabeth.
She remained this young, graceful queen right to the end of her reign. And the other thing I like about this is the very nerdy numismatic bit, but the penny in particular is this great link back to British Anglo-Saxon history, because it's a silver coin. It's a silver penny. And we originally had silver pennies as pretty much our first money back in the Anglo-Saxon period. So you've got this great link back to our history with them. But the Maundy ceremony itself is something that has really evolved from that idea of charity. So the monarch giving something back to the population, the poor of the population, in terms of charity. And it wasn't just coins. And I sort of did a bit of digging and found a great extract from Mary I's reign. So Queen Mary, Bloody Mary, if you want to call her that. She is the one who's the Catholic monarch in between Henry and then Elizabeth coming a bit later on. But she does the Maundy ceremony, takes it very seriously, and she does the washing of the feet. Her Majesty knelt down on both her knees before the first of the poor women, and taking in her left hand the woman's right foot, she washed it with her own right hand, drying it very thoroughly with the towel which hung at her neck. And then from there, she starts to give gifts to these particular people, and she goes back and gives them food. We get references to plates of fish, plates of loaves, and she goes back a second time with distributing these alms, and a third time she gives the woman a wooden bowl filled with wine, going back again to give them clothing, going back again to give them shoes, and then for the sixth time she gave to each a leather purse containing 40 pennies according to the number of her own years. And so you can see how each time she's gone back and given different gifts of alms or charity to these people.
So this is Mary I. So we're way back here. We're before Maundy coins are special. This is back when it was a charitable entity, and this is why she's giving out so much stuff.
So the coinage would actually be usable, and the clothing and the food is genuine charity. What happens is that over time, you end up with the coins becoming the thing that becomes the charity. So you get rid of the distribution of food, you get rid of the distribution of shoes, and all the other bits and pieces, and then you end up with special Maundy coins, and you end up with the other purse containing actual money.
Yeah, so the second purse, the red purse, contains today, like the bishop said, £5.50 in ordinary coins. And that is in lieu of food and clothing.
It is, yes, symbolic of those other gifts that would have been given. And up till the First World War, that would have been a sovereign. 1915, I think, was the last date when that was a sovereign that was given to them. And then after that, it moves on to a more symbolic payment as we got today. But what we're seeing with this is all about the monarch giving something back, whether it's in the form of charity as it originally began, or today, the monarch, saying thank you to those who are involved in Christian charity. But it all means a lot to the people involved back then and today. So let's listen to an example of that.
My name's Bob Meggs, and these coins were donated by my mother, Mrs. Frida Meggs, after she was one of the Royal Maundy recipients in 2016.
And that must be such an honour to have that bestowed upon you, on your mother. So we have in this case here Mrs. Frida Meggs' very own collection of Maundy coins that she was gifted by the late Queen. There's two purses a red purse and a white purse, and a selection of very special coins which are associated with each. Now, what do you have to do to be the recipient of Maundy money?
It's to commemorate not one big act of goodness or service. It's an accumulation of acts of service throughout a whole lifetime. And in my mother's case, it was because she'd been heavily involved with the church ever since she was a little girl, basically. And as she grew into adulthood, she became more and more involved with, on the lay side, she was never ordained, but she was always involved with Sunday schools, PCC, just anything to do with the life of the church and really looking after other people. And she always saw motherhood, I think, as much as a verb as a noun, I think is the way to put it. She definitely saw herself as a mother, but she saw mothering as a kind of activity that you do to look after other people. And that's basically how she expressed it, was through not just her relationship to me and my two brothers, but to her, what she considered to be her extended family in the church. So anything that she could be of service, that was what she did. And she kept it going, house groups, prayer groups, youth clubs, certainly since before I can remember. And she kept saying, why me? Why me? Why not someone else? She was saying, how's this going to work? Because she was almost housebound by then and could only get about in a wheelchair. And she said, we can't possibly make it work. So I said to her, look, aside of all that, do you want to do it? She said, well, yes. I said, right, well, we'll find a way to do it. And so we said yes. Alison passed the nomination back up to the bishop. And then in due course, around about the beginning of December, Mum got a letter saying, you've been selected. I do hope you'd be able to take up this honour. You don't need to do one big thing to be famous and well thought of. It's just the things that really matter are the things that tick along in the background a little bit here and there, and it all builds up into something that's probably amounts to more than the sum of its parts.
A life lived well.
I think so, yeah. And I think for Mum also, sort of seeing the Queen face to face was another privilege for her, because she remembered towards the end of the Second World War, her oldest sister took a commission in the army, and Princess Elizabeth, as she was then, was present at the passing out parade there in an ATS uniform. And then, I can't remember, it would have been about 1948 or 49, my uncle, Mum's youngest brother, was commissioned at Sandhurst, and Princess Elizabeth was at that passing out parade as well, and Mum remembers them both. So it was kind of, that was another circle that closed for her, really, I think.
That was Bob Meggs there talking about Mrs. Frida Meggs, his mum's Maundy service. And we've now actually got those coins in the museum, which is great for you, isn't it, Abigail, from an exhibition point of view?
Yeah, so as we said before, my job is to put things from the collection on display. And a lot of what we have are small, two-sided objects in the form of coins. And we obviously had lots of Maundy coins in the collection, but these were different because these Maundy coins had actually left the mint, been awarded to somebody, and then have been brought back. So Mrs. Meggs actually left them as a bequest in her will to the museum. So the full set of Maundy coins, the red purse of ordinary coins, and also the paperwork and the ephemera that goes with the Maundy service.
That's so fantastic, because we don't get all of that extra material, do we? That happens once it leaves the mint. We're just the manufacturer of these things. So to have the full picture, the complete context of it is brilliant.
It's lovely to be able to add a little bit more to what we were able to before. We can tell the story of the coins, we can tell the story of the production, but what we couldn't really do previously was tell the story of the day and what it's like to actually receive them.
It's a personal story now. It's an individual. It's somebody who it's been affected by, isn't it? And that's what everything that goes around it brings to life.
And what a fabulous woman she must have been to be acknowledged in that way. What a moment of pride for her and her family.
I mean, she sounds absolutely wonderful, and it's delightful that she was able to do that sort of last act of service here in sharing all of this with everybody now, because now people can come and they can learn and they can see the items on display, they can read the story and hear the exhibition, some of the personal stories. And that's all thanks to her.
It is all thanks to her. It is. And as part of the Secret Life of Coins exhibition that we have on at the Royal Mint Experience at the moment, it's a really core part of that display. And they're beautiful objects, and the purses are fabulous to look at. And it's lovely, like we said, to have that sort of order of service, and we've got her ticket. It's just a really personal touch.
And she's not an isolated example in terms of her service. And we really get a sense of just how much all of this means to those involved from the Bishop of Norwich.
What I particularly like about the Maundy service as well is that thing that you see that commandment that Jesus gives being taken forward by kings throughout the centuries. Because in the past that they used to actually wash the feet as well. That was something that was done by monarchs in the past. And this is about giving, showing that connection back to the people from the monarch as well, and following through on that commandment with the giving of gifts.
Absolutely. So it's a sort of embodiment of that very spiritual, significant moment. And I would almost describe the giving of those gifts being as sacramental. Because as I walked with the king, each person, he placed these two purses in their hands. And with both of his hands, he held the hands of the recipients. And looking them in the eye, he had a short word for each of them, a thank you, or what has your involvement been? And where I knew, I was able to quietly say to the king, this person has fostered 46 children and adopted 3 children with special needs. This person has developed their churchyard for biodiversity. This person has been a sister in an order all her life as an adult, etc. And he would pick up those themes and say something unique to each person. And many of them of the recipients were deeply moved and in tears. An incredibly special moment of the king with very ordinary people who've done extraordinary work in their local parishes and in their communities for which they've received no real recognition. But here in this most special of moments, in this most holy of weeks, they're thanked for their Christian service. These folk are representative of the great treasures of commitment to Christian churches across this land. They are the treasures of the church, just a small representative group who are thanked by the king each year, but incredibly special people who, day in, day out, serve Jesus, be the sort of generators of light and makers of salt in their community.
I think that's a fitting way to start bringing this episode towards a close. It's obvious there that the Maundy service is a deeply meaningful ceremony for those involved in it. But with that, it leaves us to start thinking, what are our penny for our thoughts for this episode? What about you, David? What has been your takeaway from this whole episode?
Well, we focused on one ceremony which has involved coins very deeply and thoroughly, but they seem to have popped up in a few ceremonies, some that we were researching and talking about earlier, some that we didn't get a chance to. And it occurs to me that coins form part of these ceremonies because they're a sort of a constant. They bring us back to the past by staying so similar for so long. I mean, the Maundy coins have been in pretty much this form for centuries now. And they just act as this little, their secret life, if you will, is they act as this little link back to the past. And that is so, so important when you've got a ceremony or a tradition to have that kind of heritage looking back on where it came from. That's the point of it.
I think the thing I'm getting from all of these episodes for this series is the coinage is that window onto the past.
Exactly.
It opens up so many different meanings and so many different interpretations and different ways of seeing the past. I think that's what's kept me engaged, really.
Yeah, you need a sort of an anchor with ceremonies like this, with something that has heritage and tradition. You need an anchor, and that's the coin.
That's great. What about you, Abigail? What are your takeaways?
We've heard from the Bishop of Norwich, and we've heard from Bob Meggs, 2 people with an intimate connection to the Maundy service. And I think what's really obvious is how much meaning there is behind these small silver coins. They're presented to these incredibly worthy recipients, And they're sort of in recognition of a lifetime of service, of lots of small deeds accumulating over many, many, many years. And yes, they're recognised with these beautifully struck coins that are incredibly special in their own right. But they're more than that. They're more than just their monetary value. They're more than just coins. They are this recognition of a lifetime of good service and a life lived well.
There's real power to them, isn't there? And yet again, it's another common theme that I'm starting to get across from all of the episodes is the power of these small objects. Their power extends way beyond their size.
Absolutely. Yeah, they're worth so much more to their new owners.
Thank you very much for listening to this episode of Secret Life of Coins. If you have liked what you have heard, please do rate, like, and subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. I would also like to thank our guests on this episode, Bob Meggs and the Right Reverend Graham Usher, Bishop of Norwich and Lord High Almoner. It is also goodbye from my co-hosts, Dr. David Mason.
Goodbye.
And Abigail Kenvin.
Bye-bye.
Our music today is by Justin Bryant and our editor is Hugh James. Until next time, thank you and goodbye.
Join us next time amidst the flash of guns and the smoke of battle as we send Susie off to war. We'll be interrogating the power of words and language and exploring how coins of the Civil War period could make or break a monarch.